All right, in queue. So I can't, I said off the mic, I can't thank you enough for coming on today and taking the time. I think are you out west in
Yes,
California?
Los Angeles. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the middle of your day there. So I do appreciate you coming out. You coming onto the mic. You didn't have to fly here, which is nice. So you probably couldn't come on if we didn't have the pandemic. But I really want to, I heard you speak when you came to our PodMax event like a couple months ago, and I tell people stories. So I'd really like to hear about, where you're from, where you grew up. Obviously, you didn't like wake up making poetry when you were born. So, how you got into poetry and all the songwriting and the stuff you do. And then we can talk a little bit about the business of, the creative side of all the stuff you do, if that makes sense.
Cool. Yeah. I was born and raised in Santa Monica, California. My mother's a school teacher
Okay.
and she raised me on her own. So my father was not around.
Okay.
And when I was probably like, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9, I kind of like fell in love with hip hop.
Okay.
And I didn't really have um,
Like hip hop dancing or like rapping or
well, originally, my times are off. I have a really vague and
it's okay.
ambiguous memory. So I kind of like say these random ages. And even as I'm
It
saying
might
it, I'm
not be
like, I
right.
don't think that's
Yeah.
accurate. What I know is my mom's from Brooklyn and
Okay.
she took me out to the East Coast to like
To the
visit
West Coast.
and stuff like
Oh, she
that.
brought you
No,
back to
no,
visit.
no, no.
Well, what made her leave Brooklyn?
I mean, that's a question for my mom.
Oh, you don't even know.
I think she wanted the sunshine and
Okay, yeah.
the fresh air and a little bit more space. And
Yeah.
I think she always had a California dream. My mom's a
Three
really
things that are
interesting
lacking
woman
in
too. She,
Brooklyn. Yeah.
what's that?
Fresh air, space, and nice weather is definitely the three things lacking in Brooklyn. So I can understand her going to California.
Yeah, she's from Flatbush. She
Okay.
grew up there in like the 50s, basically. And I think she had a really great childhood there, for the most part, as everybody has their stuff.
Right.
But she always, I think, really wanted to live in California. And so I'm definitely a California kid. I
Yeah,
mean,
born and
I
raised. Have
was
you
just
been
kind of like,
Brooklyn? You wouldn't recognize Brooklyn today. It's so
we
different
we
now.
went back. Uh, this is years later, but not when it started to
Recently.
get super gentrified.
Yeah.
I guess in a new way.
Yeah.
But we went back and visited her own building, and we just like knocked on the door. And I remember some random dude came.
He
He's
comes and
like, "What do
answers
you
the
want?"
door. Right. Wasn't very friendly, right?
Yeah, it wasn't very friendly,
Right.
So we abandoned that idea pretty quickly.
That's
But
so funny.
anyway, I was like really like hype on the "Parents Just Don't Understand" song by Will Smith because
Yeah.
I related to it. I was like, yeah, parents just don't understand. So
Right.
I like really asked my mom. I was like, can we go to Best Buy so I can get this tape cassette? And I got the tape cassette, and I went back to my cousin's house and just like put it in her little boombox, and I played it
Yeah.
over and over and over again. And I literally would start it, and then I'd write down a sentence, and then I'd stop it, and then I'd rewind, and I did it until I wrote out all of the verses, and then I was in there for 4 hours, man. Then I just rapped the song, after I had written it out,
Right.
like, I don't know, 20
Just
times straight or something
because
like
you just
that.
wanted to do that.
I just, uh, I just loved it immediately. I have no idea why, but something connected to.
You remember what the first, it's funny you say cassettes. My kids don't even like, that's was my first thing was like a little cassette player. And I don't even know what the music was. Do you remember what the music was? The first thing that you got?
No, I don't have
No,
any, no
no
memory.
recollection.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Cause
my
you,
mom had one of those. I mean, she had a record player too, but then
yeah.
it upgraded, and she ended up having one of these stereo systems. And
Yeah. The
my
cassette
mom
deck.
liked Frank Sinatra and Bette Midler and stuff like that. So we had very different tastes. Although Frank Sinatra and Bette Midler are awesome, they just weren't my cup of tea.
When you were 8 or 9. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't rap to it. Well, I guess you could rap to it probably, right? It's just words. You can rap to anything, I
Yes,
guess.
but just because you could
Right. Well, you were a kid. You
doesn't
think you
mean you
know
should.
everything, right? Yeah. Parents are stupid. So
Yeah, well,
what?
that's why I related to that because it just
Yeah.
it it made so much sense to me at the time. I think I really like related to this deeper truth. I was like, you know what? Parents just don't understand.
Yeah.
They
Well, every
don't.
kid in America thinks that. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're gonna think that forever, by the way. So it's actually
Right.
kind of
Of course not. Yeah. And
classic.
there's probably a lot as a parent now that we definitely don't understand. Like there's so much shit my kids bring up nowadays, all the transgender stuff, they, he, this, the difference between your gender identification versus my kids are always, I don't know what the hell they're talking about. Like, I'm like,
But
well,
that's no different. I mean, it is different conceptually, socially, politically, but it's no different than just the normal generational
right.
evolution. And
Yeah,
whether you
exactly.
understand it or not, I mean, evolution doesn't care whether or not you
Oh,
understand it.
not at all. They're growing up in a
You know?
different world than we are. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. So when did you get into like, you started writing music and stuff and then you started performing? Oh, you were 8, so you weren't
I
performing
was,
on stage,
yeah, I
right?
was rapping and you know, I was always kind of like a goofy kid, I guess. And I felt pretty isolated in many ways. When I was really young, my mom got me a scholarship into this private school,
Uh-huh.
and all the kids were rich, and we were
Yeah, right.
not.
Well, that's what happens in private schools for the most
Right.
part.
So
Yeah.
then I felt kind of isolated there. It didn't
Yeah.
really feel like I fit in. And then in junior high school, because we didn't have enough money to go to the next
Right.
school, I
Right.
ended up going into, you know, a public school, but I went in at seventh grade. You know, normally the kids start in
Right.
sixth
It was
grade.
junior high yeah, I'm about your age. So it was junior high when I was young too, 7th, 8th, and ninth. Yeah.
Exactly. So,
Right.
well, no, we were sixth, seventh, and eighth. And then ninth
Oh.
grade, you go to high school.
Oh, but you went in the middle. Like you
I went in the
jumped in the
middle.
middle. Yeah,
And I
that's
didn't
kind of
know
hard.
any. So yeah, I was
Right.
kind of like, and it was just very, very different. You know, the environment was very different. So I felt kind of out of place there. But and then I kind of felt out of place because I didn't really have a dad, and so I didn't really have any mentors or anything like that. I didn't have anybody that I trusted or really looked up to. So I think in a weird way, I fell back on my imagination,
Mm-hmm.
and
Okay.
um, and then I think that that's partially what drew me to creating through hip hop, but ultimately poetry and rhyming and songwriting. Uh, it was because I didn't need anyone else to do it. It was a world inside of my mind, and it was very empowering to
Yeah.
find my voice through that over the years.
Yeah. Well, you definitely make you make statements with the words that you put together. So do you remember the first time? Because I remember when I was younger, and I guess it was the thing on HBO, Russell Simmons. He had a
Yep.
deaf comedy jam and he had a deaf poetry jam.
Yep.
It was like the first time where I saw people doing that, where they were just, I assume extemporaneously, were just getting up and, performing.
What do you mean extemporaneously?
Like where it seemed like they were doing it almost improvisationally.
No, none of them
No,
were.
they were preparing and practicing. Yeah, see, so well, then they did a good job. They were
Right.
good
They
at it.
they
Yeah.
made you believe that it was so in
Right.
the moment that you thought it wasn't written.
Yeah.
Which is a testament. Look, I was on HBO's Def Poetry Jam. I
Maybe I
had
saw you.
long
I don't know.
hair and I had a pleather jacket. I was 23 years old. It was right after 9/11.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I definitely saw it earlier than that.
no,
That was when it
no,
started, right
that
after
was the
9/11.
first. Yeah, I was on the first
Oh, then
season.
yeah, okay, then I'm gonna see my timelines are off too.
Right. Well, everybody's is. If you live long enough,
Yeah,
you know,
you
it's
don't
not
have shit in your head.
chronological.
Yeah, absolutely. Just very, very hard.
But I remember that very specifically because it got postponed. Def Poetry Jam, the first season, was one of the first live events that was put on in the city after 9/11.
Okay.
And there was an extra intensity around that. There was an extra
Was it in New
celebration
York
as well.
that they did it?
Yeah.
Oh, it was in New York. Okay,
Yeah.
because you were in LA or
Yep.
California.
Yep. So they flew me out for that. And I had a great experience doing that. Didn't really know who I was yet, still
No,
figuring
23 years
out,
young. Yeah.
my style. And when I look back on it, I mean, feel like that performance was pretty naive, but that's also a compliment to me and artists in general. You know, if you're growing, you're supposed to look back on other things that you've created and say, I'm so excited for how much uh, I can see the difference from where
Yeah,
I was
sure.
to where I am, you know?
Yeah.
But I had a cool experience. Dave Chappelle was on my episode, and
Oh
so
yeah,
I
I
went
love him. He's
outside
great.
and he was smoking a cigarette, um and I was like, "Yo, man, can I bum a cigarette?" And so we ended up just like chatting for like 10 or 15 minutes, and we met as momentary equals because he liked my performance, and so we were able to actually like talk to each other, and he's one of the most incredible artists in the world right now, so
Yeah.
it's a
Was
cool
that
memory.
before he dropped, he kind of had a little breakdown for a while. He dropped out of sight. Was that before that or after that?
Yeah, I mean, breakdown or breakthrough. I think you would have to talk
Both.
to
Yeah,
him
right,
about which
exactly.
which one that was, but I think it was before that. In fact, I know it was before that because it was right after he put out the first special, Killing Me Softly, which was a huge special and one of the best comedy specials I had ever seen. And I'd seen him a couple of times, like at the Comedy Store, and he always destroyed whatever room he was
Yeah.
in a
He's
hilarious
great.
and poignant way.
Yeah. No, he's a
And so I
thoughtful
was I
guy.
was already a fan, man, and it was cool to vibe with him for a bit.
Yeah, definitely. You keep in touch with him?
No, I
um,
would like to,
yeah, I'm
hopefully
sure.
hopefully I'll meet him again.
Everybody's busy. So you're in junior high, did you, I mean, you never had your mom was like, listen, you're going to college and you got to study this or that, or your mom never really got in your way?
I wasn't really a good student, man.
So that you dealt with that problem.
Yeah, did you?
I look, I didn't know any better. I just did. First of all, I wasn't very creative, right? So I wasn't very talented. So I did well. I tried to do as best in school I could. I got into college. I came out of college, didn't know what I was going to do there. My grandmother, my Jewish grandmother, always told me go to law school. So I went to law. I was drunk with a friend one night, and he's like, "I'm going to law school." I'm like, "Okay." And then he changed his mind 2 weeks later. And then I said, "Well, should I do this or not?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do." So I went to law school. I'm like the accidental attorney. So I never really did
That should
anything
be the
like
name
with
of your movie.
passionate. Yeah, right. Maybe my bio if they ever do my memoirs. But yeah, I was never really passionate about anything. Like, I mean, that's probably the thing that's missing in my life. But so but you weren't a great student, but you were talented. I mean, you found your outlet from a creative standpoint.
Yeah, but I don't know if I was, people tell me this all the time. I was literally talking to somebody yesterday and they were like, "What you do is a gift from the gods." And I was like,
You don't feel that way.
it's very humbling
Yeah.
and sweet to hear people compliment me in that way, but that's not my experience. My experience is that I was kind of good,
Yeah.
and then I just kind of got obsessed with it. And as I said, it was the place that I felt most free and most empowered in my life. And so, you know, what is a purpose, right? Like, purpose starts with curiosity.
Yeah.
People think purpose is like a lightning bolt that hits you, and maybe it does, but
That's just the start, right?
um, yeah, but the lightning bolt is curiosity, and then the curiosity turns into real interest, and maybe the interest turns into enthusiasm, and the enthusiasm turns into passion, and then the passion and the time and the love turns into purpose. And then even then your purpose can change at any point in your life. That's actually a
Yeah.
huge mistake people make, is that they assign themselves to one dream
Right.
and they
That they
forget
can't
to
give
check
up.
back in
Yeah. Yeah. They
to
can't give
see
it
if
up.
it's still their dream, and
Right.
so they
They're
actually lose
miserable.
time.
Yeah.
um, I always check back in to see if I still want to be doing this, but I don't feel that I was overly talented, man. I feel like I was overly a hard worker.
Yeah. So, this is my belief about talent. Like, I think people have innate talent, like something about what you do and how you create, right? Is it just fit with you? But it doesn't come like just all of a sudden you're going to be the national poetry slam champion. It still takes a lot of practice and a lot of time and a lot of thought and the writing and the doing and the getting better at what you do, just like anything else. But people don't see that. They see you in their mind as this, persona that has a lot of empowering things to say, and you touch them. So they don't see the life that you lived and how you, through your mind, it's just different. That's what I think.
Yeah. I mean, I still fight to not have to live up to that way that anybody else sees me.
Yeah.
So
I don't think you should. Right.
a lot of celebrities, they really like buy into that or
Yeah.
even sell that.
It's a lot of pressure, isn't it?
Um,
If you
well,
tried to live up to
maybe
that.
for them or maybe
Yeah.
not for them. I can't speak for them, but I can speak for me. And I feel that, um, I mean, I don't know. Even in life, sometimes I still feel pressure to show up as a certain way for even the intimate relationships that I have, you know? So
Right.
that's like the foundation of it is making sure that I can actually show up and be responsible to the people that I love, but truly be the authentic person that I am in those relationships. And then I guess that microcosm ends up rippling out into the world. And yeah, maybe I'm able to do that on stage with my art because how I create is so personal. And
Hmm.
then how I share is a reflection of that personal moment. But making sure I'm not thinking that I'm as good as everybody says I am or as bad as everybody says I am is
Yeah.
also a valuable part of the process.
Yeah. You don't want to get too, what, it's a silly term, but too big for your britches, right? Because then you lose perspective on the value that you bring to the world. Because I think a lot of your stuff is like, it's all this energy, it's like, because what, I mean, look, I'll be honest with you, I'd never met you before. I'd seen some of your stuff, and then you all of a sudden, I don't pay a lot of attention to the Podmax guys, what's coming on, because I always know they're gonna have a great, so I just go on, and then you were on there. But a lot of your stuff, and I've watched it and listened to it, it's empowering words, and it's thoughtful, and it's cerebral, and it makes you think. And that's what affects, I think affects people. But you also do songwriting too. Like, what did you start with doing when you were becoming an artist?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely started with rapping, and that was what I thought I was going to be able to do for the rest of my life. But I never could quite turn the corner on it. I was always really talented, and there's plenty of times where I got close
Mhm.
to really having at least an opportunity to break through. You know, back in those days, you needed to know a middle person. You needed to
Right.
know an A&R or get it signed, or
Yeah.
you couldn't just find your audience the way that you can
Like you
now
can
with
do
the
it. Yeah.
technology.
Like
So
social media and stuff.
yeah, so for me, it was like trying to make demo after demo and album
Yeah.
after album and do showcase after showcase. And I performed one night at a club, and Dr. Dre gave me like a standing ovation. I remember somebody came up to me and was like, "Yo, Dr. Dre's in the back. He stood up for you and clapped." And I like went back and talked to him, and I thought that was going to be my big
You
break.
arrived. Right.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
just, I don't think I ever, it's strange. When I started rhyming, I think it was just an outlet for whatever was going on with me at that time in my life. I had a lot of
Hmm.
unresolved kind of like emotions and thoughts, and I couldn't like get things out of my system. And I think that this was my avenue for that. And then as soon as I started having some local notoriety,
Right. Yeah. Some
you
success.
know,
Yeah. It
yeah, well, but it wasn't success. It
was
was just
locals. Yeah.
acknowledgement and validation and girls and I don't know, whatever
Right.
else.
Yeah. You're like a
I
local
started to
celebrity,
like,
right?
yeah, exactly. I started to like lose my voice slowly. I started to try, as we were just talking about, like to try to be somehow like this version of what I thought people wanted. And that was very
Yeah.
slight at first, but then it accelerated as I couldn't make it.
Right.
Because as I couldn't make it, I started to manipulate what I was doing based on what I thought would work because I had no plan B.
Right.
Well, I didn't go to college. I wasn't a good,
Right. No fallback.
no. So all in my 20s, I was figuring that stuff out. Now, lucky for me, I wound up at this poetry lounge when I was 19, and I started doing my rapping a cappella there. And
Okay.
that community uh, really taught me everything I know about spoken word and about it was like my artistic college, basically. And it was 350 people that would pack into this little theater. It's called the Poetry Lounge every Tuesday night. And people would get up and perform. And,
Like open mic.
exactly. but it was the biggest, if not one of the biggest open mics in the country. It
Yeah.
was one of the places that Def Poetry Jam modeled their television show after. So they modeled it after the Lounge and, you know, the New Eurekan in New York. And so it was just a really incredible space that was bubbling with creative juices. And it was the first place I saw people being celebrated for being vulnerable,
Yeah.
you know, getting up and saying things that were socially and politically important to them, and people responded. So it just became, as I said, a community, and then ultimately a family. And yet even during that whole entire time, I don't think I was truly
Authentic.
yeah, I think I
Yeah.
was still trying to be this
That
thing
you thought you were supposed to be. Yeah.
that I thought I was supposed to be, and that I thought would work, man. Because
Right.
when you're like 18 and you're broke and you're trying to figure it out, it's kind of like cute. But when you're like 29, you
Yeah.
know,
Not
and
so
you
cute
can't pay for
anymore.
dinner, dude, it's not
Right.
cute anymore, man. And so it was this long kind of like drawn out journey. And then I ended up, you know, I was on Def Poetry Jam, as I said, because I was still really talented. And I ended up winning the National Poetry Slam Championships with my team at the time, because we had a great team and a
This was
lot of
how old?
camaraderie.
You were around 29, 30?
No, I was probably like 25 at that point.
Okay.
I don't know, 26.
Right.
Um,
But even with that, you were still trying to find what felt right, what you were looking to do, right?
yeah, and to be honest, I mean, I still am now. I mean,
Yeah, I would hope
it's a
so.
never
Right.
ending journey, right?
Yeah. Journey ends with
You're not
death.
a
Yeah.
right. You're not a product.
Basically.
You're a process. And
Right.
uh, if you forget that, you start dying, actually. So, you know, I'm not trying to be overly dramatic, but it's the
It's the
way to
reality of it.
calcify,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like you stop challenging yourself, you stop exploring, you stop all of that. So, even though I feel like it was more pronounced when I was younger and I was still trying to figure out kind of who I was and everything through my art and outside of my art, it was all necessary. And then when I was like
Yeah, because it
around,
gets you to where you are now, right? You don't want to change the journey because you might change like what you're doing now and where you are and the kind of person you are. It's all part of the process, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Also, confusion is a valuable tool for exploration. I
Yeah.
mean, if you're confused about who you are and what your place is in the world and what you're supposed to be like, and maybe this goes back to not having a dad and I was like very sensitive and, you know,
Yeah.
also going to the private school and then going to the public school. Like we lived in a neighborhood that was very multicultural and there was just a lot going on in the neighborhood, but my mom kept me really sheltered. Like,
Protected you.
yeah, she was,
Yeah.
you know, God love her, but she was definitely overly protective. She's like a quintessential Jewish mother. And
From Brooklyn. Right. Sure.
yeah, and so I think having those two dichotomies of like being in this like private school and not feeling like I fit in or I belonged, and then going to this public school and having to like deal with whatever I was dealing with to just kind of like settle in, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Made you
I,
question a lot of things.
a lot of things, man. And that
Yeah.
confusion then led into that kind of dilemma with me finding my voice through art. But all of that is something now I look back on and I'm just so grateful I took that ride, because it brought me so many insights and so many experiences, actually, because I was trying on all these different masks. And when you try on different masks, different things happen to you.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
those things, even if you're wearing a mask, they happen to you. And
That's for sure. It has nothing
they're
to
in
do
you.
with the mask you're wearing.
Yeah. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people, right, by the way, that are like, unfortunately, you know, they're in prison right now because they were wearing a mask in a moment, and you know, they got, you know, one moment happened, or you know, there's moments when you're wearing a mask and life-changing stuff happens, you know,
Yeah.
for good or bad. But
Yeah. Both ways. exactly. Yeah. No, I think that even if you have a little talent, if you don't have experiences in life that like make you question things and look at things differently, you don't really create that much. Maybe that was my problem. I really didn't. I just had a mediocre, not mediocre, let's say just calm childhood. My parents were both there. All four of my grandparents were both there. There was very little trauma in my life. I didn't really have anything to that would make me question things like they do now. Now I question things like, how did I get here? Why did I do this? And then I would have done things differently. But just like you, I like my kids. I like my wife. I wouldn't change that. Then they wouldn't be
Right.
here.
Right. So it's not a problem, right?
Right.
It's a
Can't complain.
solution
Right.
to who
Exactly.
you have become.
Yeah.
I remember when I first got into my junior high situation, I remember on the first day, I was just so out of sorts, man. I don't tell this story often, but I was like walking to my locker and there were these
You're now
kids.
in public school, right? Seventh grade. You
Mhm.
had to leave the private school because it ended at sixth grade and you had to
We didn't
move
have any more
over.
money.
Yeah. Right. Scholarship ran out.
Scholarship
Yeah.
ran out.
Right.
So the other kids went to this other, high school or junior high, whatever it was, but that extended, I guess, into high school. It was like
Right.
a
The
whole
private, the rich kids.
magnet program, whatever.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
And by the way, I always kind of resented them for that, which was not fun for me either, because if you want to be rich, you can't resent what you want to be. It doesn't help.
Does not help. Right. We
So
attract everything. Yeah.
now I'm like in this, environment, and these two kids, they're throwing this other kid up against the locker, and they're like, and I was like,
Like bullying the kid.
yeah. And I'm like, hey
Yeah.
guys, don't do that, And then the fucking kid ran away.
The kid they had thrown against the,
Yeah,
he took off.
ran away. And they were like, what, Holmes?
Oh God. And were you a big guy?
No, I was a little kid. I was like, I didn't grow very quickly, and
Yeah, I was a skinny kid too, little. Yeah.
yeah. Then, so even the first time I ever rapped in public was, there was this kid named Jimmy. So on my first day, this all happened on the first day, and I'm like very like disheveled. This is probably not what your listeners have any interest in
No,
listening to.
I'm interested in the whole story. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't care. They'll listen.
I'm like figuring it out. I'm like, what's going on here, And then I was at PE and they were throwing the locks in the locker room, like they would just throw the locks like over the top.
The padlocks that lock the, okay.
Yeah. So I'm like, locks.
Yeah, you get hit in the head with one of those. Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Knock your teeth out.
I go out to like play basketball and something happened. I don't remember what happened, but these kids were like messing with me. And one of the kids was this kid, Jimmy. And as it was happening, he just saw in my face, I guess, like that I was not prepared. And he had this like moment of sweetness.
Right.
Because all these kids are sweet, actually, most of them.
Yeah. Deep down
kids are just mean because they're mean, like
insecure,
they don't know
whatever.
any different,
Right.
So
now you hadn't experienced any of this, the private school, right? It wasn't like this at all.
No.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And I went to boys club basketball and all of that type of stuff, but I was pretty sheltered. So he like clocked it, and he was like, you'll be all right, man. Right. So that kid got killed the next year.
You're kidding.
No, he got killed in a drive-by.
Oh.
And we weren't like friends, but
you just
like
knew him from school.
We were cool. And he was, I always really appreciated the fact that he did that for me in that moment, that he would just clocked it and that he called it out. And it meant something because I had to figure out how to navigate pretty quickly. And there was just somebody who showed me kindness in a moment.
Yeah. Did you ever tell your mom that story? You ever tell anybody that story? Your mom?
I never told my mom, no. But anyway, that was the first time that I ever rapped was like basically like a tribute to him
after he had gotten killed.
Yeah, And
Was that like at
anyway,
a school function or something? Like when did you rap?
it was at a YMCA camp or something
Oh,
like
okay.
that.
Yeah,
We
right.
went to camp,
Sure.
and then I had written this thing, and I ended up doing it, but there were people that knew him, from the junior high as well. So
That takes a lot of balls. I can imagine you were nervous the first time you get up.
yeah,
Or you
but that wasn't about me. That was about him. I wrote something that was
it was a tribute to him.
supposed to
You weren't
be a
focused
tribute
on
to
you.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So I made it
So
easier.
yeah.
So when
Anyway,
you were talking about the poetry lounge when you're 19, right?
yeah.
So like what made you do? Did you just stand up? I mean, you knew with the poetry lounge, so you wrote stuff and you rehearsed it, and then you said, "Okay, I'm going up on the open mic." I think I would have wet my pants, but that was me.
Yeah, by that time I had done so much
Yeah, you were
rapping and
comfortable.
performing and battling. I would start battling kids because I figured it out. So by the time I was in high school, I was like battling people and doing whatever I
Yeah,
was doing, and so no, it felt natural to me to be in that environment and to share something to me. It was like a muscle I had built up.
yeah, you had practiced and gotten
Yeah.
comfortable with it. Yeah, just like being on stage. I was back then. I was very shy. I wouldn't do that, but now I can stand. I can speak to groups. Doesn't bother me. But I remember starting. I was not confident. But you
I
do it
mean, I don't
enough, and you
trust
get
people that
confident.
are immediately confident at
Yeah,
that.
there's something weird about that, right? Something wrong. There's
Maybe
something they're
they
not telling you. If they lead you to believe they're confident, I don't think that they are.
I mean, how can you be confident with
Right.
something you've never done before? I mean, maybe some people have a easier time than
That's
others,
what it is. Right. Yeah.
but
But they can't not be nervous or worried or whatever. It's just
dude,
human nature.
getting up and saying things to people and being judged and them kind of deciding to vote you off the island or to welcome you into the campfire.
Right.
Yeah, that can be nerve-wracking still to this day.
I guess, the funny thing was over time, I realized that it was always more that I was nervous about than was actually going to happen. Like everybody's nervous. What's the phrase? Like they would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy.
Yeah.
It's never, nobody's done to throw a tomato at you. It just doesn't really happen that way, with rare exception, when you put yourself out there. I think most of the people are more, thank God they're not up there. That's what they're thinking, and they're nervous.
Right. And also,
Find your
what's a
groove, I
tomato?
guess.
What's a tomato?
Exactly right. It's not
Tomato.
going to kill you.
It's a goddamn tomato.
Right.
It's
Even
like
if they did it, it wouldn't be that big of a
yeah, you
deal.
just literally wipe the tomato off or
And just keep
move.
going.
It's not even that big of a deal.
Yeah.
I think what happens is that people think it's going to be a bazooka.
Right. Like somebody's gonna, yeah, that's never going to happen.
And other than cancel culture, it's not a bazooka. I mean,
Like
cancel
people
culture
booing
can be
you or whatever, saying bad things about you online, stuff like that.
well, but even that is just what it is. I mean, we come from hunter gatherer, histories where if you got kicked out of the group of 100 people, you would die. You
Yeah.
can't make it on your own. So you want to obviously be in the group, but we're not supposed to be getting the opinions and random thoughts of 100,000 people based
Right.
on something that we put out into the world. It's very strange, actually. It's not, I don't know. It's just human beings aren't built for having that much feedback.
Yeah. It's too
So
much.
yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel
Even
good
all
when
because of like social media, right? You could put something out there and hear back from everybody in the world.
yeah, literally.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
by the way, you're hearing back from people that you might in person never want to engage in, let alone hear their opinion about
Right.
something that you're doing or something that you believe. A
Right.
lot of these people are extremely unhappy. Like, I have never in my entire life written a negative comment on something that someone else has created because my philosophy is I'd rather, create than hate.
Yeah.
But
Right.
hating is easier for a lot of
For a lot
people
of people. I
than
don't do that either.
creating.
Yeah.
So it's like, I just think about the mind state you would have to be like, I'm gonna, you
Right.
know,
Where you are and you're like, well, what was the growing up as a Jewish kid? And well, you were out on the West Coast. I was, you were always taught if there's nothing nice to say, don't say it. Right. Not go and blog about it. People think, I think, when they're behind a computer or they're on a phone, that they can say whatever they want. They feel more free to blurt, to vomit on the screen, which they, like you said, wouldn't do in person. They would
right.
never do it in person. You want to punch them in the face too, but it's just, there's no filter because of that. And I think people forget what they say. That's why I tell my daughters, if you're having an argument with your friend, don't do it on text. It will be misconstrued.
Totally.
Totally, because there's no emotion, there's no inflection, there's no tone in your voice. And that's exactly what happens every single time. They get in a fight over something. Well, look, she said this. She said, pick up the goddamn phone and call your friend because she's your best friend. Say you're sorry, you think she misunderstood you, and get together and have a soda and talk about it.
That's good advice.
Totally, every time. It's totally like, yeah, she didn't mean that. She said this, and and that's what's going on in the world. Like
That's
everyone, right? I mean, we're out of control that way. And it's very disconcerting to me as a parent. I see my kids going through this stuff. They all hide behind this stuff. And that's why, I was very intrigued by what you're doing as an artist, because, you're putting words and things out there, but it's not written. It's got sound and inflection and tone behind it, which obviously gives it meaning, right? Life has no meaning unless we have language and sound, right? Because without that, it's all bullshit and nothing's going on. So that's why I thought,
it's written in my book, and I like that people can experience it without my voice, without my inflection, without my intention, because I think it's
so they could give it their own meaning, kind of.
Exactly. They could take ownership over it in a new way. So I really like that. But people also listen to the audiobook, or they come see me live, or they watch the Amazon special that I have, or they listen to my podcast and they can get my energy and my personality and, my zhuzh.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So this is a business podcast, right? Entrepreneurship and actually, as an artist, you're an entrepreneur, and not all artists are, but there are artists that, some of them build production companies, some of them don't, some of them just build their own, but you've really built this into a business of yourself. You're the brand. I don't know what point you changed your stage name from Adam to InQ. When did it become InQ? InQ is really for in question, right? Like you're questioning things, and right. So where did that come from?
Well, I was 15 years old when that happened. And I know
that it was a while ago.
15. Yeah. That actually is accurate. Between 15 and 16 was when I got that nickname, and it was given to me because it was Inquiry originally. And then people started calling me InQ, and then people started calling me.
Were you just like the kind of kid that kept asking questions all the time, or?
Yeah, probably an annoying amount. But if I didn't do this, I probably would have been a great therapist.
Probably, yeah. Well, you're very cerebral.
So
then when did you
gone to college? But
when you were on stage, though, in your teens, and then you're 19, were you already InQ at that point? Like when you were getting up on stage? You were.
Yeah.
Oh, so
you don't think I made this up as an adult? It's kind of weird.
Maybe in your 20s. I thought maybe in your 20s it developed. It was a nickname, and you said, you know what? I'm going to go with this because it fits. No. Oh, okay. That's good.
Honestly, I am very comfortable with who I am, or at least more comfortable with who I am than I've ever been at any other point in my life.
That's cool.
And I have an incredible life. I really do. I'm so proud of the life that I've created for myself, especially knowing some of the places that I've been along the way. Mm-hmm. And that even living the life that I have right now seemed impossible. Mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, all of that. But I also I don't even know who I am. I mean, I'm still figuring it out, man.
That's so contrary to everything you just said.
Well, but that's the dichotomy of life.
I guess you're right. That's totally the dichotomy of life, right? You're reinventing yourself, questioning. That's what we do, or we're dead.
So the reason why I was saying that is because you're like, you know, at the beginning, do I call you NQ? Do I call you Q? Do I
Right.
call you Adam? And I'm like,
It's
I don't
like you've
really,
been this
first of
all
all,
your life.
I
Yeah.
don't give a shit. I really don't.
Yeah.
But secondly, like, I don't feel like an Adam,
No,
but I don't necessarily like feel like an NQ.
no.
But I actually feel like both of them very much so. And I
Well,
don't
now,
feel
yeah.
that they're very far off from each other. Like I feel like, you know, they are one thing. So I that sounds like a bunch of nonsense, but I know what I mean.
No, but I think now that you tell me that it was back when you were a teenager, you've had this nickname for a long time.
Yeah.
It's really a part of you. It's just, somebody calls you a nickname. It's just another nickname,
Right.
but you've made it part of your art. So when did you decide or realize, hey, I could make a living at this, being creative and producing things and stuff like that? That didn't happen when you're 19, did it?
No, well, as I
Yeah.
said, you know, I was just kind of getting by. And at first I used to break dance at bar mitzvahs. By the way, I
Really?
break dance very loosely.
For
I was not,
money?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Like
we
with the
were
DJ, like you'd work for the DJ, you're one of the dancers.
had this crew called EIE, Elite Interactive Entertainment. They were
I
all
love
from
it.
Jersey, mind you.
Nice.
And
Nice.
you know, Fresh and Bozzy and King Lyric, and
There you go.
we had a posse, right? And we would show up at these bar mitzvahs and we would rock the house. And I
Yeah.
hated it and I loved it because it gave me 250 bucks, you know, for the weekend. And by the way, I'd
Yeah.
do it once a week. So then I was making $1,000 a month. You get by on that. Then after
Yeah.
that, there I ended up working at a, um, like as a night receptionist and would just literally write raps the whole time because nobody called. So I was like, I would just sit at this desk and, you know,
Like a
Pacific Title
switchboard at
Mirage.
night or something.
Yeah, yeah. Hello, Pacific Title Mirage. Yes, I'll
Oh.
transfer you. And then I would just write, you know, that's all I did. And then after that, I ended up working at a recreation center and I
Mhm.
opened and closed the gym for the basketball players and took care of racquetball and, you know, just sat at the front desk and mean mugged anybody that came up and asked me too many questions and wrote raps. And so all of these jobs were just interim period jobs. I was barely getting by, but I was able to do my art, you know, for the most part, full time, because I didn't work very many hours doing these things. And then being broke got really boring.
Tell me that.
And I was doing all these shows around LA. I would still like put on shows and 200 people would show up and I'd do an hour or something like
That
that.
you were putting on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Where you
mean,
put
they wouldn't
flyers
really,
out or you put whatever, I'm doing a
dude,
show.
handing out flyers,
Yeah.
like, you know,
There was no
literally
social media then. Yeah.
person to person.
Right.
Um, and then I ended up getting a publishing deal with
Wow.
a,
Okay.
a company that
Starting
wrote
to
pop
happen.
music. And
Okay.
they saw one of my shows, TJ and Antonina. Rock Mafia is the name of the company.
Okay.
And they're one of the best production duos for pop music and all sorts of types of music in the industry. And they had a lot of success. And I think that they thought, well, maybe we can bring this dude in to make the lyrics a little edgier.
So this was to have you write and then they would sell the
Hmm.
work to
Yeah.
artists.
Hmm.
Okay. Got it.
And at that point, I was just kind of desperate, you know, because
Yeah. You
I
know,
was like, I can't quite figure out how to make any money doing this. And I had been really full time without a job for like 5 years. And I was like, this is just, you know,
not
way too
sustainable.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Exactly. And and then they brought me in and I started writing with them. And it was kind of slow at first, but then we wrote a track together and Miley Cyrus ended up cutting it. And
Okay.
then she sang it at the Billboard Awards. And then I wrote another song with them. And then I wrote another song. And then I,
Now, did you get paid more if someone bought the song or recorded the song or no?
of course,
Oh, yeah, you did. Okay.
you don't get paid more up front, but you get paid more on the
Like
back end. If the song is
renewals,
successful,
residuals when it's right.
yeah, exactly. You get mailbox money. So then I co-wrote the Selena Gomez song, Love You Like a Love Song. And
Okay.
you know, these songs were not songs that I would even listen to on my
Right.
own. So
Yeah.
it's very strange for me to be writing them, but it turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to me artistically, because it forced me to go outside of my experience
Mhm.
and use my imagination to create. And then I started doing Disney songs. Like, they had this deal with Disney where they had all these Disney television
That they
shows
needed.
and movies that they needed tracks for. And so I started just writing. Now I've written, I think, over 50 Disney songs over the years. Some have
For
been
different TV shows and stuff.
successful. Yeah.
So you were just writing the lyrics though. Who was doing the music and you were doing that too?
TJ and Antonina,
They would do
Tim
that.
James, and then also Thomas Sturgis, who goes by Taz. And we just had a little crew. And we would, when we had these assignments, we would come in and knock them out. And we still do. Every once in a while, we'll get like 3 to 5 Disney songs a year. And they're fun. And it's a great excuse for me to hang with the crew again and be creative in a way that I wouldn't normally do on my own.
So were there times like you were write something and you in your mind you pictured it to be this kind of a song, and then when they're done with it, it's totally different than what you thought it was going to be?
Yeah, 100%. The good thing is that they were way more experienced, way more talented than I am in songwriting and producing.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a student, and I just brought my lyrical ability, which was really great. So every time that happened, the song was always better than I imagined it.
Okay.
Um, and also, there was a learning curve for me from the standpoint of letting go of control, because as a poet, and even like writing the book, this book, I asked for feedback from friends and from the, actual editors at Harper One, but the book is me. When I make a poem, I sit down, I am the writer, director, producer,
Right.
performer.
Performer, right.
No, I know what is right for me. I am the first person in my audience. And then I get up and I share it. There's almost no one in between. In fact,
Right.
there is no one in between many times. And then I get feedback from the audience, and I get feedback from how I feel when I'm performing it. And then sometimes I'll go back and edit it, but it's just between me and me.
Well,
So
because
to
it's your
actually, like,
authenticness, right? I mean, you want to be authentic, you said. So
yes.
you don't want to have people in the middle changing it. Doesn't make sense.
Well, at least not before I get out what the poem wants to say. I mean,
Okay.
I want
Makes
to
sense.
I want to get out what I want to get out. And then once it's out, I'm happy to get feedback. But what I was really trying to say is that in the songwriting process, you have no control. You are collaborating in the truest sense of the word.
Right.
And there was something really cool about that as well. I learned a lot from letting go of artistic control.
Right. Well, your job was to come up with words that you thought fit whatever they told you. Their job was to come up with music that they thought fit with the words. So that's collaboration,
Yeah,
right?
and also they would write the words with me, so we would bounce off of each other. So it was this really,
Oh, it was like
it's
a
very collaborative.
process where it was going on at the same time.
Exactly.
Okay. So then how do you do things now? I mean, how do you, I mean, I know you right, you sell your book, you perform, I guess, and you make money performing.
Not, I guess.
Definitely.
Yes.
Right. Um, how long did it take where you were like, I can do this for a living? Like, I don't have to do these other shit jobs anymore
Well, I had already gone full time. I was doing these part-time
because
jobs,
of the
and then I went full
songwriting, right?
time, and I was just barely getting by. The songwriting gave me a financial foundation to kind of build off of. And I could have just focused all my energy on songwriting
Yeah.
full time, but I had this passion for poetry. Some of the best art experiences I've ever had was as an audience member watching another poet on stage. And I know what it is that I do,
Mhm.
and I know what it is that some of the best poets in the world do. And it's very different than what people think performance poetry is often. And experiencing it can be transformative. So I just decided to pursue it. I decided that I was going to build a business around it. I met my first manager at that point, and we just started working on creating a way to monetize the art form without losing the integrity.
Yeah. I mean, before I met you, I didn't know there was even a national competition of slam poetry. Who would know?
Yeah, but even that, that you're going to win that, and then the next day you'll wake up and nothing will have changed. So you actually have to build a business around the genre, because it's not well established to be monetized in popular culture the way that it deserves to be.
Yeah, well, I don't think you're doing that in like MetLife Stadium, right? I mean, I guess you could. Need
I
a big
don't
screen.
remember. I
People
think
can see you. It's
St.
the biggest
Louis or
stadium.
something.
Yeah, that was
I don't remember. It was like 2,000 people that was the championship, but no, you're not doing 50,000.
right. Yeah, I would think it would be hard to get people following. So tell me what you're working on now, and what's coming up. I mean, obviously the pandemic made things kind of difficult, but it probably also left you a lot of time to create and to write online stuff. So just want to know what's going on now.
Well, the book came out during the pandemic, and I picked this up earlier, but for anybody that is interested, it's called
Yep.
Inquire Within.
There'll be a
And
link in the show notes. And I thank you for the electronic copy as well. I've been looking through it and reading it.
yeah, for sure. My pleasure. And really proud of the book. It's gotten an enormous amount of great press, and just, people have absolutely loved it. I think especially during this time. It was difficult to promote during COVID, but I think that it was really meaningful for people. And then there's the audiobook, and the audiobook, we were nominated for an Audie Award around that. And so I read
Okay.
all of the poems to people. So that's really awesome. And then I have this Amazon special that we put out that was at the Ace Theater, and that was 1,700 seats, and we sold it out. And that was clearly a couple of years, I guess, even before the pandemic started. But you can check that out if anybody's interested. And then I do company and corporate workshops and keynote speeches, and I do that virtually. And we're also starting to do it in person
You
again.
are starting? Yeah.
Yeah, I've started to have some bookings for the rest of the year, which is really nice. But I mean, I still ended up doing probably 100 shows last year virtually.
Just virtually.
Yeah, so lots of people were still hiring me, and then I was doing some public shows as well. And then I also started a workshop series digitally called the New You Workshop. And when companies and corporations hire me, a lot of times they hire me just for the keynote speeches, but a lot of times they'll hire me to come do these interactive trust building workshops through poetry. And then I
Where
actually,
people like explore their own feelings and create and stuff like that.
yes, but I tie it into whatever's going on with the team. So whatever
Okay.
is going on with the company and that specific team, whether it's 50 people or whether it's 350 people. And by the way, I've done this for literally everyone. Like, you could have met from Lululemon to JP Morgan Chase. I mean, I've
Uh-huh.
run the gambit. And it's always incredible and transformative. People are always a bit suspicious. They don't know what they're getting into. And then by the
Right.
end of it, they just have a really open mind and a really open heart, and they connect to each other in a deeper way. And it's my belief that context allows for better communication, which allows for better collaboration and creation.
So that's what
And
you're
so
there for,
that's
team building and
exactly.
connection and better collaboration, stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah. I think a lot of times there's a lot of confusion in workplaces because we really don't know each other. And
Right.
so it's almost like what you were saying about the text. There's just a lot of like, I didn't mean
Things that
it
are
that way, or
misconstrued.
you
Right.
don't
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
you don't know what's going on with someone, or, so if you can get into a place where everybody just becomes human for a second, but you are able to develop the prompt around what's going on in the company and align it with that,
Mm-hmm.
just really surprising and incredible things can come out of it. So anyway, I've been doing these digital things publicly as well. And so we've had a lot of people who've been joining those, and those have been really fantastic.
Now, how
And
did
then,
you start?
one more
Oh, no.
thing,
Yeah.
podcast. I have a
Yeah.
podcast,
Right. What's the name of your podcast?
Inquire Within, the same
There
name
you
as the
go.
book.
Perfect. How many episodes you got out so far?
I think we're like at 10. We're just literally interviewing the best poets in the world. I
Cool.
just literally, get all of my amazing friends and
Is it on it's on Apple and Google and all
oh
that
yeah,
stuff?
Apple, Spotify,
Let
all
me
of
find.
that.
Let's see. Let me say I gotta get it. I gotta subscribe. You need more subscribers. Got to subscribe to me. I definitely need more subscribers than you
Okay, I got you.
do. I was going to ask you though. Yeah. So what was the genesis of the workshop idea? Like where did that come from? Did somebody say, hey, can you come this week? How did that happen? Like I wouldn't something I would think of.
I started doing that in like downtown LA, like kind of borderline downtown LA, starting into East Los Angeles, and it was at a place called Art Share, and I just had this
It
amazing.
wasn't in a corporation. It was your own workshop that you set up.
No, yeah, it was started out with kids, man. I would do it. I did it there. I did it with Upward Bound, which was like a program for kids who had never gone to college before. Nobody in their family had gone to college. They were the first people that were about to go to college, and they were coming out of high school. And I did all of these like random gigs here and there, like where I would just come in and do it at high schools or junior highs or libraries. I did it at all these like
But
public
that was that your
libraries.
idea and you were marketing it to the high school? I mean, what like they didn't come to you and say, hey, we have this idea. Would you do it?
When you're an artist, like let's say a poet, and
Hmm.
you're figuring out how to monetize what you do, you wind up doing all sorts of things for money. And oftentimes, since poetry is writing,
Yeah.
people would just say, well, do you have a program for kids? And then
To
you just
teach
kind of
them
go
how to,
like,
yeah.
yeah, I guess I do. And then
You'll
you
make it
create
up.
it,
Yeah. Right.
make it up. And then what is really crazy is that, I mean, as you said, you're an accidental lawyer. Accidentally, I created this program that is
Impacting a
truly
lot of people.
transformative.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
not only kids, it's adults. It's like
Right.
anyone who experiences it winds up uh, coming out with a memorable
Experience. Yeah. No,
experience.
that's
Yeah.
why I'm asking you because it sounds very cathartic, very transformative, and you probably get people to connect in a way that they really didn't think was even like they didn't think they had it in them. A lot of people say that.
They can't believe it. They
Right.
literally can't believe that in an hour and a half, when I start these workshops, even on Zoom, man, it's really funny because I wasn't sure they were going to work.
Yeah. Because you don't know
And
about the connection, right?
yeah, but the thing is people want to be vulnerable. They don't want to, but they want to. And if you give them the opportunity and you lead by example, they will follow. If you don't lead by example, then it's irresponsible. I can't ask other people to be vulnerable if I'm not vulnerable first
That's
as a
100%.
facilitator.
Right.
But the way the program works, every single time, you start and people's eyes are like kind of like in a certain place, and then by
Yeah.
the end of it, man, you see everyone and you see them seeing each other and being seen, and it's wild, man. It's
Yeah.
like a magic trick.
That must make you feel good though when you're right because you're really impacting a lot of people. And that's kind of what you're trying, not kind of, that is what you're trying to do through the words that you write and how you say them and what you do. So I'm sure it's
It's an
rewarding
honor.
to do that stuff. Yeah.
It is an honor. I
Yeah.
really mean that. Like, but everything we do, by the way, you said this earlier. You were like, "Oh, I'm not passionate about," but you're passionate about the podcast, right? I
I
mean,
am. I wish I could do that for a living. It does lighten me up. A lot of people say, "Oh, you light up when you're on the podcast." I like talking to people, and I find them interesting. But I don't love practicing law. It's not my favorite thing in the world. I like helping people, but I could probably help people other ways if I had a choice. But it's fine. It is what it
well,
is. I meet guys
I,
like
I
you, and they empower me and get me excited, and then I see the world differently. So you're impacting me.
if I didn't have my lawyers, shout out to John
I
Paul.
can't. I can't help you in California anyway. So
No, no, no. That's not even what I'm saying. I'm saying if I didn't have my lawyers, I would be in trouble. So lawyers provide
yeah,
a very specific value to me, and
I
I'm sure you
appreciate
provide a
the
lot of value to your
yeah,
people.
I appreciate the plug.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. I have you heard of Landmark, the
Yep.
Landmark Forum? Yeah. So I did that a couple of weeks ago or something because a
Cool.
friend of mine's like, you got to do Landmark. I'm like, all right, well, I don't know. And then one day she calls me. She's like, I signed you up for Landmark. I'm like, what? So I had to
Okay.
do this, but it was in the pandemic. They've been putting it off, putting it off, putting it off. And so I had to finally do it, but it was on Zoom. So like you're 33 hours for 3 days. It was long,
Yeah.
but it surprised me. Now I don't have at least I don't think, the traumatic things that some of these people were coming on. They had been abused, they had been, problem. But the things that people shared on Zoom, these aren't in the same room. There was one woman talking about how she decided and she's come to the conclusion that she likes women more than men. Well, she's married, whatever. So the instructor said, well, are you going to tell your husband? And she's like, well, yeah, he's on this call. Like he was in another window.
Wow.
On the call. And there was a lot of stuff like that where people were saying, my father abused me or I was raped and it's amazing that you could still make those connections even though we're on a computer, So maybe that's some hope for a society, I guess, if we have to go back into
somebody
lockdown.
listened to one of my podcasts the other day, and I was having a conversation with this incredible poet, Yana Robinson, and we somehow got on the subject of she had been dating somebody at a certain point, and she thought that he might be gay, and so we started talking about that. It was like a good conversation. It was a respectful conversation. It wasn't judgy or anything like that.
Yeah.
We were like actually delving into that. And I guess there's a guy that heard it, and he realized that he was gay.
But it wasn't the guy.
No, it was
No.
a different person that was just listening to the podcast. And I'm not giving any of his information, so I don't
Of course not.
telling
Right.
the story. It's a generalized story, but the point that I was trying to make is that he was moved by the conversation and recognized something in himself that he hadn't been willing to recognize, and was willing to reach out and say that, and to say that he wanted to pursue that truth in his life that he hadn't pursued. And I was like, that's amazing. The fact that somebody can listen to a conversation and that it can be that impactful to them.
Yeah.
So the technology that we have, there's a lot of bad things that come from it, but it also is really meaningful, and it depends upon how you use it, whether it's a tool or a weapon.
Yeah. Well, think about all the stuff we're sharing, just specifically through the podcasting industry. But I mean, we're sharing so much stuff. A lot, most of it's good, I think. I think if it's really that bad, the providers pull it. If it's hate speech, Nazism, that stuff gets pulled down.
Yeah.
But I think for the most part, people want to impact, and that's what I like what I do, and that's what I like what you're doing, because everything you do is to move people, and that's truly like totally authentic. That's exactly what you want to do, and you do it from the heart, and it is refreshing. But I hope that people listening to this will, check out your stuff and listen to you and learn or think. That's what I think we all try to get people to do, is to think a little bit about the messages that we're trying to put out. But I do thank you for taking an hour of your time in the middle of your day, probably, I hope, in sunny California. I don't know what the weather's like. Here it's now it's kind of gray here in New Jersey, but it was hot yesterday.
It's a beautiful day. I'm going to get out there.
All right. In Q, Adam, Q, I can't thank you enough for spending time with me. And I'm a subscriber to your podcast now. And, like I said, I can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much, man. Lots of love.
Thanks. You too.